January 2009. The title is basically an introduction to this blog, and it lays out this sort of dorky statement of purpose saying it's going to be a place to share software engineering tips, industry information, and the early posts are all very wonky, just sort of complaining about common coding mistakes or recommending books on programming. But within a few months, the blog starts to take on this sharper edge. The blogger notes that China's censors have started blocking more websites, such as Twitter. And the author says, "This is terrible news, and it's time for me to write about something other than technology." And so soon, the blogger starts posting about all sorts of things: politics, history, literature, just a really huge range of topics.
然后我又花时间去看了编程随想的博客，发现有很多很多性格上的相似点这种意见。
And as Bei is reading all of this, the first thing that strikes her immediately is the blogger's tone.
他说话的方式，他讲话的语气。
Because in her telling, it was totally her husband's voice. It was eager to learn, eager to teach, but also, sort of swaggering, sort of arrogant.
就是很张狂的。
And she also notices that there's this ongoing list of book recommendations that the blogger had kept updating. And as she goes through this list, she sees that a lot of them are the same books that her husband had recommended to her and insisted that she read. So, there's 1984 by George Orwell. There's Thinking Fast and Slow
by Daniel Kahneman.
Yeah. And there's another clue beyond just the voice or the overlapping book recommendations, which is the timing of certain posts. So, for example, the verdict had said that the problematic posts in the blog started in 2009, which is the same year that this blog, Program Think, had been founded. And the very last post on this blog is May 9th, 2021, which is the day before Bei's husband was arrested.
Wow.
And so she's putting all of these things together, the voice, the interests, the timing, and she becomes absolutely convinced that Program Think is her husband.
But does all of this really feel like proof? The overlap in dates and a couple of book recommendations?
Well, so it's important to note that it's basically impossible to 100% confirm if Program Think really is her husband, Ren Xiaohuan. She has not been able to speak to him and ask him about this herself. But there are these things that line up, and at least for Bei, it's enough. She spent 20 years with him, and she is certain that this blogger and her husband are the same person.
Okay, so Bei is absolutely certain she's found him. How does she process all of this?
So I asked her this, and she said that her first reaction was actually jealousy.
我甚至有点妒忌他，妒忌别的人，就是我老公把事情。
Because remember, this blog had an intensely loyal following. Some of these posts have hundreds of comments under them, and the blogger actually took the time to respond to many of them. And as she's looking at this, she's thinking, wow, my husband spent all of this time doing all of this for his readers.
他一直在影响很多的人，他也给他们书单嘛。我老公把时间花在做这些事情上面。
All of these years, it was these people who had his attention when his study door was closed. And, what did I get? All I got was a reading list.
然后我也只是拿到一个书单，我不知道你能理解我这种感觉吗？
But beyond her emotional reaction, she also still just wants to understand what exactly was he writing that the government thought was so dangerous. And so over the next few weeks, she returns again and again to the blog to read it in really close detail. And she combs through all the posts that she thinks could potentially be the most provocative or the most sensitive. And it's true that a lot of them do take on information that is sensitive in China. So, for example, there are posts that explain the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. There are posts that show how the Chinese government has manipulated historical photographs to fit the narratives that it likes. There's also a series of posts where he collects information from foreign news reports about Chinese leaders' financial relationships and maps them all out for his readers. And this is really, really sensitive. The Chinese government does not like anybody to be talking about family and financial relationships among its leaders. But Bei's argument, as she's taking in all of this information, is that there's a difference between criticism and subversion.
不是说对政府的批评就是煽动颠覆政治。
And she says, he never called for violence or riots.
改善啊，他自己也说他是为了要改善啊，对吗？
In fact, he said that his motive was to improve the state, not to subvert it.
But isn't that a little bit naive on her part? I mean, clearly this is the kind of activity that would be banned by the Chinese government and that people get in trouble for all the time.
Yes, you could definitely say that she's ignoring the realities of China's political climate. But technically, at least on paper, she's not wrong. There are no explicit laws in China saying, for example, that you can't talk about Tiananmen. And so, putting all of this together, reading all of this, she comes to the conclusion that this blog does not cross a line. And in fact, she actually starts to believe that not only had her husband not done anything wrong, he had actually done something really important.
我觉得他影响了很多人，然后为大家制造了一个可以去看外面世界。
She told me he created something that allowed people to see the outside world, to think independently, to have their own thoughts and opinions. And as she's spending her time reading over this blog, seeing what she thinks her husband was trying to teach other people, she actually starts to go on that journey a little bit herself too.
我觉得他是一个伟大的人，但是我觉得
And she says, I'm realizing that there was a great man living next to me the whole time, and I just didn't see it.
这就是我的目标，所以我变得更强大了。
And one thing she said that was really moving was that, as she's reading the blog, she's actually reminded of the Ran Xiaohuan, the person that she met in college, the person that she fell in love with.
现在我可能又回想起他大学的那个状态了。我在大学也是有点传染。
And she sees this person that she looked up to, who was always seeking out information for himself, charting his own path, and trying to pass that on to other people.
不会崇拜一个人的人，就是会有这种感觉。
And she said, I'm not the type of person to worship anyone, but there was a little bit of that old college feeling.
And I guess in some ways, her husband isn't there, but it feels like she's in conversation with him because she's reading this blog and what she thinks are his writings. And it's a conversation they never really had during their marriage.
Yeah, I think that's right. And she says that she regrets not having that conversation sooner.
因为他以前10几年，其实就等于是有一部分是必须要隐瞒我的嘛。
Because for over 10 years, he had to hide a part of himself from me. There was no way for him to be honest, and probably I wouldn't have understood the things that he said anyway.
肯定有一些东西，但是现在我们没有这种隔阂了。
But now I do. That's all in the past, and she says what matters is that now she's ready to support him in any way that she can.
So Bei has this new information, and, in some ways new resolve. What does she do?
So if he's done nothing wrong, then in her mind it means the government has wrongly convicted him. This case has been wrongly decided. So her first action is to hire 2 prominent human rights lawyers to help her appeal the case within the legal system. But she also realizes, because she's not naive, that this can't be her only track. She's seen now that there can be problems in the legal system, like the verdict that led her to this point in the first place. And so she also decides to take a more dangerous path and do something the Program Think blogger never did, which is to go public with their identities. So in March of this year, she sends out a WeChat message asking for help, saying that she believes her husband is Program Think and she wants to speak out on his behalf. That's the WeChat message I saw. And she knows that it's risky to draw attention to both of them and to the blog, but her calculation or her hope is that by drawing public attention to this case, she'll create a kind of pressure on the Chinese government and show that her husband wasn't just some nobody that they can throw in jail for 7 years. He was somebody with a following, somebody who can garner international attention. And the government has never denied that her husband is Program Think. So they think that maybe this attention will create an incentive for the government to treat him fairly during his appeal.
And where does Bei's husband's case stand now?
So the appeal is still pending. The decision on that was actually supposed to come down several months ago, but the court again kept postponing it indefinitely without giving a reason.
So Vivian, how does this story map on to the broader crackdown in China that's happening? I mean, we know, of course, a lot of people have been put in jail for criticizing the government. What numbers are we talking about here? I mean, Bei's husband is one of approximately how many?
Well, it's really hard to give a number on that, in part because there are untold numbers of people who have had their accounts deleted or have been silenced in some way for saying something critical, but they might not have gone to jail. And if there are people who've been sentenced on national security charges, we might not know about them because of how top secret these cases are, especially if they don't have someone like Bei to speak out for them. But what we do know is that blogs like Program Think that are written from within China and that express these kinds of thoughts are extremely, extremely rare. Program Think was essentially the last one standing.
And where does all of this leave Bei? Where is she now? And how has this whole experience changed her?
Well, she describes it as an awakening.
和以前的想法完全不一样了，对世界的看法也不一样了，对这个
She looks back on the period before all of this happened and says, you know, her life was pretty comfortable. She accepted it for what it was. She didn't question it.
就是应该这个样子，就是所谓的岁月静好型的趋势。
And now she says, you know, maybe I was so comfortable and stuck in my way of thinking that I didn't know that I was stuck. But now things are different. She's slowly understanding the society around her.
慢慢的是在看清这个社会。
She took this risk that she never could have imagined before, speaking out and choosing to jump the firewall. And after she did that, she stayed on the other side of it. She read more outside news. And she told me, I used to think that news from inside China and outside China would maybe use two different angles to report the same thing. I never thought that it'd be like two entirely different worlds.
我自己都亲身经历过了，然后我在看到。
Bei told me, I have a different understanding of reality now, and there's no way I can turn back.
肯定是会的，这个无法回头了，就回不去了。
对，谢谢你了。
好，拜拜。
拜拜。And then in early June, Bei's Twitter account disappears, and she stops responding to my texts.
Oh no.
One of her lawyers who I got in touch with also said that he couldn't reach her. After several days, I got back in touch with him, and he said that he could say that she was safe, but he couldn't comment further, which is usually a sign that the government has silenced someone. And she hasn't spoken publicly since. that she had sent me before she went quiet. And it was about her determination to keep speaking out about her husband. She wrote, "I feel very strong today. I'll keep working hard."
Vivian, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Support for this podcast and the following message come from Emerson. At Emerson, engineers, designers, and thinkers help the world's most essential industries solve the biggest challenges of modern life. From developing technology that delivers breakthrough medicine that warps speed, to software that turns clean energy into reliable electricity, Emerson Innovation helps make the world healthier, safer, smarter, and more sustainable. Go boldly.
To a meeting at the engineer's office. Talk about transportation safety in Butler County. Degrees right now. Pretty nice. This looks nice.
Special education high school teacher for many years. I had a number of students with behavioral issues, not cognitive issues. Many of my students had difficulty reading social cues, and video games online were great for them to be involved in a social activity with others without the face-to-face interactions that were so difficult for them. We talked about the games in the classroom and used these discussions to help them develop social strategies. I loved the part that online video games played in my students' lives. You can continue sharing your stories with us. Email us at 1a@wamu.org. We're talking to Rebecca Valentine. She's a senior reporter at IGN, James Mastromarino, gaming lead at NPR, and Nicole Carpenter from Polygon. Minecraft is one of the biggest video games in the world right now. In 2021, it had over 140 million active monthly players. It launched in 2011. Rebecca, for people who may not know, can you explain how the game works? I had one of my nieces trying to do this once, and I was like, I don't get it.
Alright, so Minecraft takes place in this world that is basically made up of like big cube-shaped blocks, and at the absolute base level you are running around this world. It's very nature-y, it's trees, rocks, water, features, deserts, things like that. And at its very base level you're just sort of exploring this world. There is sort of a story adventure you can kind of uncover as you go, but the main activity is you can mine these blocks that the world is made out of and then use them to build structures, pretty much anything that you can think of that you can build out of blocks. And so that's fundamentally what Minecraft is. There is like a single player story that you can play through, but there's also this thriving online community where people get together with friends in these servers and they build out these whole enormous world. Sometimes they make games within the game for people to play. They make these like little societies. They act out stories. They do all kinds of things. So it's fundamentally about building with blocks, but people have turned it into everything you can think of.
Nicole, Minecraft is beloved by young people. What do you think it is about the game that makes kids want to interact with it?
I think that it's because Minecraft can be whatever you want it to be, and it's become so big and so ubiquitous that it's almost its own social network, like a social media platform. You can still have that shared goal. Maybe that is building a recreation of the library in your town, or building, or you know, I've seen online a handheld Nintendo game that you can play. It's playing a Pokemon game on the screen that you can play while in Minecraft. So I think that those sorts of things are what draws people to different Minecraft servers, but then it becomes something more, something where you go to with your friends, something where you meet people, and then it spills out into places like Discord, and those Discords that are, you know, built around maybe the builder, the influencer who controls that Minecraft server.
Well, we're hearing from lots of you this hour. Send emails. I've been playing games since I was a kid. I remember bonding with classmates through Pokemon, and a lot of those people I still talk to in school today. I also think of games like Splatoon 3 that I play today, where it's really a diverse community. While I mostly play by myself, that community aspect is something that's really cool to me. And Izzy emails, I never thought I would play video games until I moved to Boston from Wisconsin last year. I found a way to stay in touch with my friends back in the Midwest by playing Animal Crossing. It helps make the distance better. Video games have also helped me stay in touch with my brothers who are avid gamers. Even though I'm not physically there, we now call each other and talk about the video games we play. The time has come to talk about Fortnite. It's free to play. It's this online battle royale style game. It launched in 2017. It has an average of 239 million monthly players. James, help us understand, put that number into perspective for us. How big is Fortnite?
Fortnite might be the biggest online game. I think it pretty handily is. Roblox comes very close. But Fortnite has also powered Epic Games as a platform, as a publisher, and it's increasingly just a metaverse unto itself. There are concerts from actual singers and musicians that you can attend in Fortnite. There are film premieres and screenings in Fortnite, and at base, it's a derivation of these shooter games we've been talking about, but there's so much more and so many ways to express yourself with the characters that you play as, be they Indiana Jones or one of the more or another character, because there are just so many tie-ins with other media.
I mean, how much of the game is what the developers intended, and how much of it is where the players took it?
Well, it's not like Roblox where it's just a completely open platform where anyone theoretically could develop for it. So I think the developers are paying very close attention to what's working with their audience, and they'll bring in more of those elements, but it's not quite an open garden the way that some games are.
Jordan emails, I'm a mental health therapist, and I use online and co-op gaming like Minecraft and Fortnite in my practice all the time. It is a fantastic way to build trust, regulate emotions, practice, and building skills. Like all things, there can be negatives which should be watched for, but the positives far outweigh the negatives. You know, it's interesting in hearing the comments that are coming in right now. I'm thinking about when, oh Lord, I'm about to date myself, when we got Pong, and my parents were like, don't play Pong too long, right? And there was always this concern about screen time, but the people who grew up with those earliest iterations of games are parents now, in some cases grandparents. Rebecca, how do you think that shifted the way we interact with games?
I think people feel sort of automatically a little defensive of gaming because it does, you know, it is sort of the newest mode of like broad category of entertainment. I mean, you know, when TV showed up and everyone was freaked out that it was going to melt our children's brains, people were, you know, maybe defensive of television as well, and now people are defensive of gaming in the same way. That said, you know, there are also the people who have grown up with gaming. You know, I'm an adult now as well. I grew up with gaming, and I got to be real about the things that I know are troublesome about it. You know, there are very toxic people that you can run into in online communities, and there are, just like anything else, if you spend literally all day playing video games and doing nothing else, that's probably not going to be the greatest thing for your brain and your body. So, like anything else, there are things to be on the lookout for, and I think the adult generation that is now having kids and talking to them about gaming is maybe a little more informed about what the real dangers are, as opposed to sort of the hypothesized ones. And it's trying to strike this balance between sharing this thing that they love very much with their kids, while also making sure that they maybe don't accidentally get in some sort of trouble because of it.
Nicole, your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that games, like others have mentioned, are a really great tool, and it's really beneficial, I think, for parents, maybe parents who've grown up with gaming, to share games with their kids. It's a great way to have a bond and to teach lessons, you know, to teach lessons about these social experiences, to teach lessons about like emotional regulation, about, you know, success or dealing with loss. And those spaces are a relatively, you know, if it's managed by a parent, you know, it can be a safe space to explore those sorts of things, especially if the parent is experiencing this along with their child.
We got this email from Tom, who says, my son and grandkids live in Australia. I'm in Virginia. All three generations play Minecraft together. We started during the pandemic when we couldn't go visit. We still keep it up, and we are so far away most of the time. I'm not so good, so I'm constantly needing to be rescued from zombies, lava, etc. The most often comment from my grandkids is, oh dear. It's a great way to connect. James, for parents who are listening with kids who are into online gaming, what would you say to them about the potential toxicity?
Yeah.